Thank you for purchasing the Radio Fence Pet Containment System's standard kit. This video demonstrates the installation of this kit, which includes the standard transmitter, the receiver, battery, extra probes, a thorough instruction and troubleshooting guide, and installation video. Your kit may or may not include wire and flags. Teaching your pet to stay in the yard is a constant challenge. There seem to be as many solutions to this problem as there are pets. Sadly, most of these methods achieve success only at the emotional expense of both the pet and the pet's family. Fortunately, there is one solution that stands out above the rest: the Radio Fence Pet Containment System. Radio Fence is a safe, effective, and humane technique for training your pet to stay within your property boundaries. This tape will show you how to install your Radio Fence system and how to train your pet to obey the boundaries that you establish. Here's how the Radio Fence system works. Its primary components are a transmitter, a receiver, and an antenna or boundary wire. The transmitter sends a low-frequency signal through a buried antenna along the boundary of your containment area. This boundary wire carries only harmless signals. It's as safe as the radio antenna on your car. As your pet, wearing the receiver, nears the buried boundary wire, he hears a high-pitched beeping sound. This tells him that he is approaching the boundary. If he continues, he will receive a safe but effective correction, much like that of a mild static electrical shock. You can determine how far from the boundary wire he picks up the signal, up to 30 feet, through an adjustment knob on the transmitter. Before you begin installation, check the contents of your Radio Fence system. Your kit should include a transmitter, receiver with collar, battery, long and short probes, a manual, and installation video. Wire and flags can be found in the Wire and Flag Accessory Kit. The Wire and Flag Accessory Kit includes boundary wire that covers 1/2 acre, 50 boundary flags, and wire nuts which are needed for installation. If you have more acreage, you need to purchase additional wire and flag accessory kits. After viewing this tape, we recommend that you read the manual and use it as a guide as you install your system and train your pet. In addition to the contents of your kit, you will also need the following tools to install your system. For burying the boundary wire, you'll need a straight-edged spade. To make things easier, you may want to rent a lawn edger. For splicing wire, you'll need wire stripping pliers and electrical tape. If your boundary wire is going to cross concrete or asphalt, you'll need a circular saw with a masonry blade along with an appropriate patching compound. Consult your local hardware store for the type of compound you will need. Installation is easy and quick. Training is very simple and can be fun for you and your pet. Later in this video, we emphasize the training. Don't be intimidated. We stress training because it is an important part of the Radio Fence Pet Containment System. The installation of your Radio Fence system involves 4 simple steps. These are planning your layout, locating the transmitter, installing the boundary wire, and connecting the system. Step 1. Planning your layout. You can customize the layout of your Radio Fence system to fit your specific needs. As you're planning your layout, keep these important facts in mind. Your boundary wire must make a continuous loop from one terminal on the transmitter to the other. Make gradual, rounded turns in your layout. Sharp corners affect the signal and will confuse your pet. A 6-foot radius is recommended. Twisting the boundary wire cancels the signal. This allows you to run the boundary wire across areas where you do not want a signal, from the boundary to the transmitter, for instance. It also allows you to create specific zones to keep your pet out. Utilizing these rules, you can customize any yard. You can enclose your entire yard, any portion of your yard, or just single boundaries. Keep in mind that the boundary wires must be at least 3 feet apart to avoid affecting the signal. In these cases, you may first want to lay the wire on top of the ground to determine the correct amount of separation required for your particular installation. This same method allows you to fence just your front yard or your backyard, giving your pet access through the house. To use this boundary pattern, you'll have to double back with your boundary wire. Remember to separate the boundary by at least 3 feet. Using these techniques, You should be able to plan the layout of your radio fence. Trace it out on a sheet of paper before you begin installation. Step 2. Locating the transmitter. Find a dry, protected place that's near a 120-volt electrical outlet. A garage could be a likely choice. Do not install the transmitter in a barn or shed. Be sure that there's access through door jambs and along baseboards to run your boundary wire through. Do not run the boundary wires along with electrical wires, telephone wires, television cables, or antenna wires. Do not plug in the transmitter at this time. You must ground your system by running a 12-gauge wire from Terminal A, page 9 in the installation manual, to a grounding rod your utility company put in, or one of your own. It is better to locate your grounding rod close to where you will mount your transmitter. To make a good ground rod, buy a 4-foot galvanized or copper rod and bury it several feet deep. Be sure and obtain a ground clamp to connect your wire to the rod. Any electrical supply house and most hardware stores will have both the rod and ground clamp. Step 3. Installing the boundary wire. Make a shallow groove along your desired boundary. Place the wire in the groove, making sure you have enough slack to reach one of the terminals on your transmitter. Burying the wire is not necessary, but it does protect it from small animals, lawnmowers, and other disturbances, and it keeps people from tripping over it. You only need to bury it 2 inches or so. Burying it too deep will weaken the signal. The radio fence signal can travel through the exterior walls of your home, so be careful not to place the wire too close to your home. Across stream beds, simply run the wire through a length of garden hose or PVC pipe and secure it with stones. When crossing pavement or sidewalks, try to run the wire along an expansion joint. When one's not available, cut a shallow groove with a masonry blade. Carefully place the wire in the groove and cover it with the appropriate patching compound. To form an enclosure within the boundary, run the wire from the boundary to the area you want to enclose. Encircle it, and then twist the wires together back to the boundary. This will cancel the signal between the boundary and your enclosure. If you have a large yard, you may need additional boundary wire, flags, and wire nuts. These are available in the wire and flag accessory kit. To add additional wire, you'll need to make a simple splice. Here's how. Use your wire stripping pliers to strip 3/8 of an inch of each end of the wire you wish to splice. Place the exposed ends of the wire into one of the wire nut connectors included in your kit and twist 3 or 4 times or until tight. To check connections, pull tightly on the 2 wires to make sure they don't come out. Then, beginning an inch above the splice, wrap with electrical tape to an inch below the splice. This will protect the splice from moisture. Be sure you mark where your splices are. That's where most breaks occur. Step 4. Connecting the system. Twist the 2 ends of the wire from your boundary back to the transmitter. Remember, twisting cancels the signal and will allow your pet to cross the area between the boundary and the transmitter. Make 8 to 12 twists per foot. You may want to use an electric drill to obtain a tight, even twist. Connect the wires to the terminal leads on the transmitter. Always connect one end of the fence wire to Terminal A. Connections to Terminals B and C depend on how many feet of fence you have. For fences 1,500 feet or less, connect the other end of the fence wire to Terminal C. Put a jumper between Terminal B and C. For fences 1,500 to 2,500 feet, connect the other end of the fence wire to Terminal B. No jumper is needed. For fences 2,500 to 4,400 feet, connect the other end of the fence wire to Terminal C. No jumper is needed. Before turning on your transmitter, be sure the receiver battery is properly inserted by doing the following. Remove the 2 screws that hold the lid. Remove the lid. Insert the battery with the positive and negative sources matching the positive and negative symbols on the shield. Replace the lid and screws. Be careful not to touch the receiver probes. Plug in the transmitter using the adapter supplied. The signal light is green when the power is applied and no fence is connected. The light flickers red-green when the fence is connected and the range control knob turned up. Next, you'll need to adjust the zones to suit your yard. The standard operating mode for your kit is beep shock. This mode will automatically be activated when the transmitter is plugged in. The high-pitched warning beep will be activated when your pet enters the protected area. As your pet crosses into the correction zone, he will hear a higher-pitched beep, but lower volume tone as he receives a correction. Next, adjust the zones of your radio fence signal to suit your yard. Approach the boundary wire with the receiver collar in your hand, noting the distance at which you hear the high-pitched warning beep. Continue moving forward and note the distance at which you hear the tone change to the correction beep. The range adjustment knob on your transmitter is very sensitive. A slight turn will change the signal zone distance by several feet. You can create a signal zone up to 30 feet on each side of your boundary wire. 10 feet on each side is most common. As a guideline, the larger the yard, the larger the zone. Keep in mind, boundary wire is dependent upon terrain. Boundary wire should be buried 1 to 3 inches. Using the range adjustment and the receiver collar, you can vary the size of your zone to the exact size you want. Congratulations, your installation is complete. Now you're ready to begin the most important part of your radio fence system, training your pet. To get the maximum use and enjoyment from your radio fence, you must train your pet properly. Train your pet the right way from the beginning. After viewing the training lessons on this tape, we suggest that you read the training portion of your radio fence manual before you begin any training. To effectively train your pet using the radio fence system, you will need the temporary boundary flags, a 6-foot training lead, the collar with the receiver attached, and a regular or training collar. The radio fence training program is based on proven animal training techniques. When training your pet, remember these 3 key words: recognize, reinforce, and repeat. The first step in training is to establish a temporary visual boundary. Place the white boundary flags, which are included in the wire and flag kit, 10 feet apart and 3 to 4 feet inside the perimeter of your wire boundary. If you have additional acreage, you need to purchase another wire and flag kit. Too much space between flags will not give your pet enough of a visual guide. You will gradually remove this visual boundary as your pet becomes familiar with his safe area. Next, fit the receiver collar around your pet's neck. If you prefer, you can use a collar of your choice. If you do so, be sure to remove the receiver from the collar that came in your kit. You'll need to make a hole for the receiver probes in the collar you wish to use. A pair of shorter probes for shorter-haired dogs comes with your kit. Use the right size for your pet. Then place the collar on your pet so the probes are facing toward your pet's skin, directly beneath his neck. Adjust for a firm but comfortable fit. You should be able to pass a finger between the tip of the probes and your pet's skin. For best results, follow the radio fence training schedule. It's made up of 4 important periods with specific training exercises for each period. The 4 periods are the first day of training, the first week, the second week, and after the first month. Do all of the steps in the training schedule in the proper order. Each period is critical to your pet's total training. Therefore, you must complete each step in sequence. The first day of training. Be sure your pet is wearing a regular collar with a training lead. Holding your pet's lead in one hand and the radio fence receiver collar in the other, walk him up to a boundary flag. Shake the boundary flag and give him a strong no command, allowing him to hear the beeping from the radio fence receiver. At this point, you're using the first key word of training. You're teaching your dog to recognize the radio fence boundary. Now, practice the second word of training. Lead your dog back to a safe area. Praise him and play with him. This will reinforce his good behavior. Repeat steps 1 and 2 around the entire perimeter of your boundary. Recognize, reinforce, repeat. Please remember that training is very tiring for your pet, so limit training sessions to 10 or 15 minutes. Make sure that other family members take part in training so that your pet doesn't begin to associate the radio fence boundary with just one person. Now, place the receiver collar on your pet's neck. Don't remove his regular or training collar and lead. Allow your pet to receive a correction. Let him walk into the boundary zone on his own. Do not lead him, as this will confuse him. When he receives a correction, shake the boundary flag and give him a stern no command. Then pull him back toward the safe area. Praise him and play with him, Repeat these steps all the way around your boundary. Unless he shows a willingness to approach the flags, it is not necessary that he receive additional corrections. When the training is over, it is extremely important that you remove your pet's receiver collar. Do not leave your pet alone with the collar until he is fully trained. And it's very important to remember to keep your pet confined for at least the first 14 days of training. For the first week of training, repeat steps 4 through 7 at least once per day. Your pet should begin to avoid the boundary flags on his own. This shows that he's learning. Even if your pet is making great progress, it's important that he receives training for each of the first 7 days. It is also extremely important that you do not let your pet run free until the 2-week training period is over. If you do so, your pet will learn by accident how to escape the system, and it will be much more difficult to retrain him. As always, it is better to do it right the first time. Until he is trained, keep him restrained or confined. Radio fence is a training device. If he is not trained, it will not keep him in. The second week of training. On each succeeding day, remove every other boundary flag until all flags have been removed. Over the next several weeks, gradually increase the amount of time you allow your pet to run free without supervision. If in this time you need to leave the boundary with your pet, remove his receiver collar and take him out of the yard only in a car. After 1 month of training, you can teach your pet to leave the boundary through an imaginary gate. Remove the receiver collar and replace it with a regular collar and lead. Always lead your dog out of the boundary in the same location. This will become his imaginary gate. Your pet will learn that he must wear a regular collar and lead to leave the boundary. Remember to let other family members take part in this training so your pet associates leaving with the lead and not with a specific person. The training periods in your radio fence training program are a guideline. Some pets learn faster than others. We recommend that you train your pet for at least as many days as indicated in this schedule. Should your pet become frightened of the training, remove the radio collar. Take him to a safe area. Praise and play with him. Resume the training the next day and alternate the training every other day after that. Let's review your radio fence training program. Train your pet the right way from the very beginning. Be sure your pet is confined for at least the first 14 days of training. Complete all of the training steps. Do not skip any steps. With proper training, your pet will have no problem obeying your radio fence boundaries. It is important to review the boundary with your pet about every 2 weeks for the first 3 months to ensure and reinforce the training. Troubleshooting. Every 3 or 4 months, you may need to replace your receiver battery. Remove the collar from your pet before attempting to replace the battery. Remove the 2 screws that hold the lid and remove the lid. Take out the old battery and insert the new battery with the positive and negative sources matching the positive and negative battery symbols on the shield. Replace the lid and the screws. Check your transmitter periodically to make sure it is functioning normally. When the transmitter is on, the single light is green and no fence is connected. If the light is not on, plug the transmitter into another outlet. If the light is still not on, call the Radio Fence Technical Service representative at the 1-800 number in your manual. The single light flickers red-green when a fence is connected. If it does not, this indicates that you have a break in your boundary wire. At Radio Fence, we stand behind our product with a full unconditional warranty. But to make it valid, you must complete your warranty card and send it in to us. With proper installation and training, your radio fence system will provide years of enjoyment and satisfaction for your pet and your family.